Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
"5 years ago, my husband and I were living the dream. We had just built our first smart house from the ground up. Everything was connected to apps on our phones, the lights, the air conditioning, the security system, even the sprinklers. We spent a year making that place perfect, and it really was our little slice of heaven. We also had 2 dogs, a golden retriever, and a beagle mix that we rescued from the shelter. These weren't your typical messy pets either. We bathed them every single week without fail, and they were completely house-trained. Never had a single accident indoors. They were honestly better behaved than most kids I knew. But life happens, and my husband got a job offer across the state that we couldn't turn down. So we decided to sell the house. We wanted everything to be perfect for the new owner, so we hired professional cleaners to deep clean the entire place after we moved out all our furniture. We even paid extra to have the carpets professionally cleaned with those industrial steam cleaners. The whole house was spotless when we handed over the keys. The buyers seemed nice enough during the walkthrough. A young couple expecting their first baby. They were excited about the smart house features and kept talking about how perfect it would be for their growing family. The realtor had been to our house dozens of times during the selling process, and she never once mentioned any smell issues. Neither did any of the other potential buyers who toured the place. 3 weeks after closing, I was unpacking boxes in our new place when I got a letter in the mail. I almost threw it away thinking it was junk mail, but then I saw it was from our old address. My stomach dropped a little when I opened it. The letter was typed up all formal and everything. It basically said that the carpets throughout the house had an overwhelming dog odor that made the home uninhabitable for their newborn child. The smell was supposedly so strong that they couldn't allow their baby to crawl on any of the carpeted surfaces. They claimed they had been forced to remove all carpeting from the house at considerable expense. The letter went on to say that since we had failed to disclose this issue and they now had a newborn to consider, they believed we should volunteer to reimburse them for the carpet replacement costs, which totaled $10,000. I read it 3 times before it sank in. $10,000 for carpets that we had professionally cleaned, for a smell that literally nobody else had ever mentioned. I started laughing because I thought it had to be some kind of joke. I called our realtor immediately. I asked her if she had gotten a call from the people who bought our house and explained that they were claiming the carpets smelled like dog and wanted us to pay them $10,000 to replace them. My realtor was shocked and told me she had been in that house at least 20 times and there was never any smell. She said my dogs were cleaner than most people's kids, that this was absolutely ridiculous, and that we were not obligated to give them a single dime. The realtor was furious. She said in all her years of selling houses, she'd never seen anything so outrageous. The house had been inspected, appraised, and toured by multiple people. Not one person had ever mentioned any odor issue, but my husband had a different reaction when I showed him the letter. He looked at it for a minute, then told me we should just pay them back. I asked him if he was insane and reminded him that we didn't owe them anything. He just smiled and told me to trust him, that he had an idea. He had this weird smile on his face that made me nervous, but I trusted him, so I agreed to let him handle it however he wanted. A few days later, my husband sat me down with his phone in his hand. He asked me if I remembered how our smart house system was still connected to his phone. I got a sinking feeling and asked him what he had done. He explained that technically he still had access to their air conditioning and heating system, plus their lights and basically everything else in the house. I stared at him for a minute before it clicked, and I asked if he was planning to mess with their house. He told me just a little bit, nothing dangerous, but if they wanted to be greedy and tried to scam us out of $10,000, they could deal with some minor inconveniences. That night he started his campaign. He would wait until about midnight, then turn their heat up to about 80 degrees. During the day, especially when it was hot outside, he'd turn their air conditioning down so it barely worked. Not enough to be dangerous or anything, just enough to make them really uncomfortable. He also had some fun with their lights. He'd turn them on and off at random times during the night. Sometimes he'd make them flicker a little bit, nothing too crazy, but enough to be really annoying. He could see when they were home through the security system, so he knew exactly when to strike for maximum annoyance. This went on for about 2 months. We never heard another word from them about the carpet money, which told us everything we needed to know about how legitimate their complaint really was. Then one day, my husband was checking the house app and noticed they'd changed all the passwords and removed the old system entirely. He told me it looked like they had finally figured it out and got their own system installed. I wondered out loud if they had connected the dots, and my husband said they probably had, but asked what they were going to do about it. He pointed out that they could hardly call the police and say the people they tried to scam for $10,000 were messing with their thermostat. We never heard from them again after that. No more letters, no calls, nothing. I'm pretty sure they realized they'd picked the wrong people to try and pull a fast one on. The realtor told us later that she heard they were having all sorts of issues with the house that they blamed on us. They tried to get several contractors to testify that the carpet problems were pre-existing, but nobody would back them up because there was literally no evidence of any pet damage. I work the night shift at the local paper mill, so my sleep schedule is completely backwards from most people. I usually do my grocery shopping early in the morning when the stores are quiet and I can get in and out without dealing with crowds. This Tuesday morning would turn out to be anything but quiet. I've been putting off this shopping trip for way too long. My roommate had been complaining about our empty toilet paper supply for 3 days straight, and I was down to using napkins I grabbed from fast food places. Not my proudest moment, but night shift workers understand the struggle of trying to maintain a normal life when you're awake while everyone else sleeps. The store had just opened when I walked in at 7 in the morning. I grabbed a cart and headed straight to the paper goods aisle, hoping to finally cross toilet paper off my mental shopping list. The shelves looked pretty picked over from the previous day, but there was one package left of the decent stuff. Not the scratchy single-ply garbage, but actual comfortable toilet paper that wouldn't make you question your life choices. I reached for the package and felt relief wash over me. Finally, I could stop rationing napkins and get back to basic human dignity. But just when my fingers touched the plastic wrapping, someone shoved me hard from behind. I stumbled forward, catching myself on the shelf to avoid face-planting into the toilet paper display. When I turned around, there she was. Everyone in town knew her. She was the woman who yelled at teenagers for skateboarding on public sidewalks, who demanded to speak to managers at every business she entered, and who somehow always found something to complain about at town hall meetings. She told me the toilet paper was hers and claimed she was there first. She wasn't even close to being here first. I'd watched her storm into the store a full 2 minutes after I'd already been standing in this aisle. I tried to explain that I was already reaching for the package when she pushed me, but she didn't care what I thought I was doing. She said she needed that toilet paper more than I did. She grabbed the package right out of my hands while I was still processing what had just happened. The audacity was breathtaking. I told her she couldn't just shove people and take things because that wasn't how shopping worked. She got angry and called me a night owl freak, saying she had a family to take care of, and that I was probably just some college kid who didn't even know how to use toilet paper properly. The college kid comment stung a bit since I was actually 26 and working full-time to pay off student loans, but I wasn't about to get into my life story with this woman. I suggested there might be more toilet paper in the back and that we could ask an employee to check. She refused to wait around for what she called some minimum wage worker to do their job. She said she was taking the package and that was final. She clutched the toilet paper package against her chest like it was made of gold. A store employee had noticed the commotion and started walking over, but she was already heading toward the checkout lanes. The employee asked if everything was okay, and I explained that she had just taken toilet paper right out of my hands after pushing me. The employee called after her, but she was already in line at the self-checkout, scanning her stolen goods like nothing had happened. The employee looked at me apologetically and went to check if there were any more packages in the stock room. There weren't. I finished the rest of my shopping in a frustrated haze. picking up everything else I needed while trying to process what had just happened. By the time I got to checkout, she was loading her groceries into a shiny black luxury sedan in the parking lot. The car probably cost more than I made in 2 years. That's when I noticed her license plate and remembered exactly where I'd seen that car before. She lived in the fancy neighborhood on the hill, the one with the big houses and perfectly manicured lawns. Everyone knew that house because she was constantly calling the city to complain about her neighbors' grass being too long or their trash cans being visible from the street. I drove home still fuming about the whole encounter. My roommate asked why I looked so angry, and when I told him what happened, he was just upset. He told me that was the same woman who got his cousin's dog walking business shut down because she claimed the dogs were too loud when they walked past her house. When I asked if he was serious, he confirmed it and explained that she was completely insane, and everyone knew her. He said she once called the cops on kids for drawing with sidewalk chalk because she thought it was defacing public property. That evening at work, I told my co-workers about the toilet paper incident. Turns out almost everyone had a story about this woman. She'd harassed the mail carrier for delivering packages after 5 p.m. She'd tried to get the ice cream truck banned from the neighborhood because the music was too cheerful. She'd even complained to the city about the street lamps being too bright. By the end of my shift, I had a plan forming in my head. It wasn't the most mature response, but sometimes petty justice is the only kind of justice available. I texted 3 of my friends, who I knew would be up for some late-night mischief. They were all-night shift workers like me, so 3 in the morning was prime time for us. I explained what had happened and suggested we pay her fancy car a visit. My first friend immediately said he was in because she had gotten his mom's book club kicked out of the community center for being too loud. My second friend also agreed to help since she had called animal control on his cat for walking through her yard. My third friend remembered her well and wanted to join us because she had tried to get him fired from the landscaping company for parking his truck on a public street near her house. We met up at the 24-hour convenience store and bought every roll of toilet paper they had in stock. The irony wasn't lost on any of us. We drove separately to her neighborhood and parked a few blocks away from her house. Her black sedan was sitting in the driveway like a monument to her entitlement. We got to work immediately unrolling toilet paper over every surface of that car. The hood, the roof, the mirrors, the door handles, even the antenna. We were thorough and artistic about it. The whole operation took about 15 minutes. We made sure not to damage anything or step on her property beyond the driveway. Just good old-fashioned toilet paper decoration, the kind of harmless prank that takes forever to clean up but doesn't actually hurt anything. We were back in our cars and driving away before anyone in the neighborhood could have possibly seen us. No evidence left behind, no witnesses, just a perfectly toilet-papered luxury sedan waiting for its owner to discover it in the morning. The next day, word spread through town pretty quickly. The coffee shop was buzzing with people talking about someone finally giving the neighborhood tyrant a taste of her own medicine. The grocery store clerk mentioned hearing about some fancy car getting decorated overnight. Even the mailman seemed to be in an unusually good mood when I saw him making his rounds. Apparently, she'd called the police first thing in the morning, demanding they dust for fingerprints and launch a full investigation into what she called vandalism and harassment. The officers who responded reportedly took one look at the toilet paper covered car and basically told her it was a prank that would wash off with a garden hose. She'd spent the better part of the morning calling everyone from the mayor's office to the FBI, trying to get someone to take her toilet paper emergency seriously. Nobody was sympathetic to her plight. A few days later, when I overheard her at the grocery store complaining to another customer about the incident, she was going on and on about how the police were useless and how she was going to install security cameras and motion sensors to catch the criminals who had destroyed her property. The other customer just nodded politely and then walked away quickly. Even she seemed to realize that normal people don't call the FBI over toilet paper. I never felt bad about what we did. I plan ahead for everything. My friends call me obsessive, but I call it being prepared. When I decided to visit my college roommate across the country, I booked my flight 3 months in advance. Not just any seat though, I chose a window seat. I get anxious in crowded spaces when flying. The window seat gives me something to focus on instead of all the people around me. Plus, I can lean against the wall when I sleep, which is impossible in middle or aisle seats. I learned this the hard way after too many flights where I woke up drooling on a stranger's shoulder. The flight was supposed to be 5 hours from coast to coast. I had packed my little travel pillow, downloaded some movies, and was looking forward to watching the landscape change below us. I got to the airport early, went through security without any issues, and found my gate with plenty of time to spare. When boarding started, I was in one of the earlier groups. I found my row, stowed my carry-on, and settled into my window seat. I had the whole row to myself for about 10 minutes, which was nice. I was just getting comfortable when this woman and her teenage son came down the aisle. The woman looked to be in her 40s, dressed in expensive clothes with perfectly styled hair. Her son looked like he was maybe 15 or 16, wearing headphones and staring at his phone. They stopped right at my row and checked their boarding passes. The woman asked if I was sitting in seat 12A. When I said yes, she told me they were in the seats next to me. Then she asked if I would be willing to switch with her son so he could have the window seat. She explained that he really loved looking out during flights. I felt that familiar knot in my stomach. I hate confrontation, but I also really needed that window seat for my own peace of mind. I apologized but told her I prefer to keep my seat since I had booked it for the window. Her expression changed immediately. Her smile disappeared, and she got this look like I had just told her the worst news of her life. She said, "Wow, that was just a seat," and told me not to be difficult. The way she said difficult made it sound like I was being completely unreasonable. I could feel other passengers looking at us, and my face started getting hot. But something inside me just clicked. I smiled and told her exactly it was my seat. I tried to keep my tone friendly when I said it, but she didn't appreciate my response. She let out this huge, dramatic sigh that seemed to go on forever. Then she grabbed her son's arm and shoved him into the middle seat, telling him to sit down in a sharp voice. Her son didn't seem to care one way or the other. He just plopped down next to me and immediately went back to his phone. The woman squeezed into the aisle seat, and I figured that would be it. When the plane took off, she started her campaign of petty revenge. First, she claimed the entire armrest between us, not just her half, the whole thing. Every time I tried to rest my arm there, she would immediately put her elbow right on top of mine, pressing down with unnecessary force. Then came the phone situation. She pulled out her phone and cranked the brightness all the way up. I'm talking about a screen so bright it could probably be seen from space. She held it at an angle that made sure the light would shine directly into my peripheral vision. But the worst part was what she was doing on the phone. She was texting someone, probably her husband or a friend, and I could see her typing things like sitting next to the most selfish person ever, and some people have no consideration for families. The passive-aggressive behavior continued for the entire flight. She would accidentally bump into me when she got up to use the bathroom. She ordered extra snacks and made sure to crinkle the packages as loudly as possible. When I tried to take a nap, she suddenly developed a need to have long, loud phone conversations during the brief periods when phones were allowed. Her son, meanwhile, seemed completely oblivious to his mother's behavior. He spent the whole flight playing games on his phone with his headphones on. A few times I caught him looking at his mom with what appeared to be embarrassment, but he never said anything. About 3 hours into the flight, I decided I needed to use the bathroom. When I came back, I found the woman leaning over into my seat, taking pictures out the window. I told her, "Excuse me, that was my seat." She said she was just taking a quick photo for her son because he was disappointed he couldn't see the view. I said, well, I needed to sit down now. She moved, but not before making sure to give me another one of those dramatic sighs. When I sat back down, she said something under her breath that sounded like unbelievable. The final hour of the flight was when things got really interesting. The flight attendant came by to collect trash, and the woman made a point of loudly telling her how disappointed she was with the lack of courtesy from other passengers. The flight attendant said she was sorry to hear that and asked if there was anything she could help with. The woman explained that she had asked me very nicely if her son could have the window seat and I had refused. She claimed her son had never been on a plane before, and it would have meant so much to him to see the view. Her son had been on his phone the entire time, completely ignoring the window. Plus, she had lied about this being his first flight. I had heard her earlier talking about their trip to Europe last summer. The flight attendant said she understood that was frustrating, but told the woman that passengers were entitled to the seats they had booked. The flight attendant gave me a sympathetic look and moved on. The woman's face turned red, and she spent the rest of the flight glaring at me. When we finally landed, I figured my ordeal was over. But when we were waiting to deplane, the woman decided to make one final scene. She told me loudly that she hoped I had enjoyed my precious window seat. She said her son would remember this flight as the one where a selfish stranger ruined his first airplane experience. That's when her son finally spoke up. He told his mom that this wasn't his first flight and that he didn't even want the window seat. He said he was fine with his seat. Several other passengers had been listening to our exchange, and a few of them actually started chuckling. The woman's face went from red to purple, and she grabbed her son's arm, announcing loudly that they were getting off the plane right now. When they walked away, I heard the man behind me tell his wife that some people's kids were just something else, which made the whole thing even better. I finally got off the plane feeling pretty good about the whole situation. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.